That's the problem.
Occupy Wall Street arguably could give Barack Obama the political support to deal with the 1% if he wanted to. Why hasn't he done that?
My feeling is that, I don't know Barack Obama that well, but that if he were sitting in the room, he would answer something, and I think I'm persuaded by this answer. If the Occupy movement were stronger, if it had been going for several years rather than for several months, and if it had gathered the kinds of support that, for example, was gathered to push Franklin Roosevelt to change his politics in the 1930s, then I think Mr. Obama would have done or would do the same thing. Franklin Roosevelt was elected in 1932 as a center-of-the-road Democrat, rather like Mr. Obama. He came in talking about balancing budgets and all of the rest. He came in about giving incentives to private employers to hire. Within a year and a half of taking office, he goes on the radio and he says, the private sector has not hired the people. We now have tens of millions of unemployed. The unemployment rate in the winter of 1933-34 was 25%, 3 times what it is today. And he said, okay, if the private sector isn't going to do it, I'm going to do it. And when he was asked, how dare you, he said, there is no option. He said, look around you. The CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, was organizing tens of millions of American workers. It was the unionization drive we had never had before in American history, and we've never had it since.
So you're saying Occupy Wall Street isn't big enough yet?
That's right.
Really?
It's not big enough. It's not cohesive enough. It hasn't attracted enough people. It's gotten majority support in the polls. The sympathy is there. But you've got to translate the sympathy into the mobilization that could go to Obama and say, you must do this or else.
In the U.S. and in Europe, we've seen bank bailouts coupled with austerity measures. And at the end of the day, it's the people that are being squeezed and suffering across the board. How much longer can that continue?
It's the $64 trillion question. And the answer is it will continue only so long as the mass of the people permit it. It is, in a sense, a game of push. The Greece situation in Greece, which is a kind of touchstone that all Americans should pay attention to, because if we're not very careful, that's our future being played out before us. Really? Yes, Greece. They can't pay their debts. We can't either. The debts of the United States today, we are the largest, the most heavily indebted country in the world. Our debts are in excess of our GNP. That's the problem. That's when problem got bad for Greece, when its total debt went above its output. We're already there. We have a very serious problem. We do not have a plan for solving it any more than the Greeks did. The hope of the rich and the corporations is that they can get enough time to kind of work it out, disperse the costs among the people, and maybe slither through. The risk that they will have miscalculated. And you can see it already in the eyes and in the words of certain of them. Warren Buffett in the United States, one of the richest people, warning the rest of the rich people in America, pay more taxes, give the government the wherewithal to help people, or else the system that made us rich is going to collapse. Those are signs of warning that ought to be taken a lot more seriously than the dismissal that his fellow wealth people have mostly given it. You know, for a long time in the United States, the ideology, the ruling way of thinking is, if you make the money, Lord knows how you do it, if you make it, it's yours, and you're entitled to it. And this mythology, this notion that I have the right to hold on and to make as much as I can and to keep as much of it as I possibly can, is making everyone who plays in this economic system loath to part with it. If I'm not forced to, I'm not gonna. So whatever gets done, don't touch mine. Don't touch mine. With that mentality, you don't face the seriousness of the problem. And you run the risk, as Buffett and others have warned, and he's not the only one. If you don't, you will miss a chance to give up a little, and you'll pay the price of having to give it up altogether.
Tell me, does capitalism have a future?
Well, you know, the great defense of capitalism all my life as a professor of economics in the United States, the ultimate defense of capitalism was always, well, yes, it may have this or that flaw, but capitalism delivers the goods. the rising standard of living, American working people have a car, a vacation, all the rest. Okay, let's give capitalism that for a long time it delivered the goods with its flaws. But over the last 5 years, it's not delivering goods. It's delivering one bad after another. Falling government services, falling real wages, falling employment opportunities, rising debts for our students, rising debts for our people. I mean, at some point, the very system you gave praise to when it delivered has to be given the criticism when it doesn't. Otherwise, you're not being serious. And I think we desperately need to ask and answer the question, is capitalism, whatever its virtues in the past, able to deliver the goods now? And if not, and I think it's clear that it's not, what changes have to be made? Or maybe are we finally mature enough as a nation to ask the question, can the United States do better than capitalism?
And your book coming out in May called Occupy the Economy, Challenging Capitalism. Do you answer some of those questions?
Yes, I try to show some of the new ways to organize or reorganize our economy that would avoid the problems we've now seen, learn from our experience, and begin to move in a different economic direction. And I think that's a reasonable way. I don't expect everyone to agree, but what I'm mostly hoping for is to reignite a national debate and discussion. Let those who like capitalism defend it. Let those who criticize tell what's wrong and offer some alternatives, and I try to do that in the book.
And we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for sitting down with RT.
My pleasure. Thank you.